Welcome to the market recap presented by Tackle Trading. Get in the game.
Good afternoon, Tackle Traders, and hello, YouTube. This is Frank coming your way with the market recap for the 5th of February. We're hanging out on a Tuesday. A little bit more of the same today as we just continue to push forward overall within the broad market. Google came out with earnings. Seemed like investors were a little mixed, but did have a little breakout of intraday resistance, at least towards the end of the day. So it should be exciting to see where they move in the days to come. Good afternoon, Ilka. Great to see you. Great to see you all. As always, guys, it is my pleasure. I certainly enjoy you hanging out, spend a little bit of time with the recap gang, getting ready for tomorrow before it's even close to tomorrow, right? That's how we do around these parts. So hope you all had a great day trading. A great day out of the market, too. Another snowy day here in Utah. Woke up in the morning and had to debate between the merits of checking earnings and shoveling snow. And you know what I wanted to win. You also probably know what did win. So looking forward to winter wrapping up here anytime soon. We did have Disney report after the bell here tonight. Looks like there was an earnings and a revenue beat. Early response up close to 2% in the after hours market. Nothing crazy. Certainly no time to dig through that earnings report, but at least the initial response pretty positive. So more snow for you as well, Ilka. Misery loves company, right? I'm just tired of it. So we also have EA, as you can see here, several S&P companies reporting here tonight. EA reported, looks like a revenue miss. They were down about 10% in the after-hour market. Games aren't just selling as well as they'd want, and I'll talk to most gamers, and they would say that's not a surprise at all. Of course, most of us gamers complain a fair amount for better or worse. So that'll be an interesting one to see how they respond going into tomorrow on the open. But initial reaction, down percent in after hours, certainly not a positive thing. As we move into tomorrow, before the open, another round of earnings. We've got 20th Century Fox. Actually, no, we don't have Fox. That's a mistake here. I'm not sure why that one is up here. But we do have GM, Boston Science, a couple that are going to be interesting to us. Humana, definitely an interesting one to me. We're still seeing, quite a few healthcare earnings, and it's been a real mixed bag. And we can kind of see that when we look at the chart for the healthcare ETF. I mean, a lot of back and forth. Nobody's quite sold just yet. We still have some to report, though. So, again, we kind of talked before, we might need this week to shake out before we get a clear sign of where we want to head in the healthcare sector. As we look at the S&P, little gap on the open and started that drift to the upside. Now, on the S&P and the NASDAQ, we basically bumped into our 200-day moving averages. And while they are flat, they're kind of the only thing that anyone could see. So we saw a little bit of profit taking before catching our footing the last couple hours of the trading day, working up towards the high points of the day. So we certainly continued that overall bullish momentum that we have been seeing, closing right there at that 200-day moving average. As we've kind of talked before, let's keep an eye on it. Let's not ignore it. But I think most traders would agree it shouldn't be a huge deal with it being flat, kind of stuck in that, flatliner, if you will. It's really the only thing, though, that I think that traders can see and say, oh, hey, this is resistance, right? Until we work really into that 2,800 range. So maybe our last little challenge, certainly we've done a fantastic job beating challenge after challenge during this bullish run. So we will keep an eye on that. Beyond that 200, again, my personal expectations, no real reason not to work into those 28s. Now, I will expect that to be a much bigger fight. That will be a place where I do think you are tightening up stop losses, where I do think you are hedging your position, scaling out, closing all together. We'll see when we get there. But that was a major price point. I will definitely be keeping a very close eye on that. But we got to get through this flat 200 first. I expect that that's not going to be a terribly difficult task. We may need to consolidate or pull back a bit before doing so. We also might just tear right through it tomorrow, right? We've seen that happen a time or two. Really in a similar situation over in the NASDAQ, working right in, closing just below that flat 200. Again, beyond that, really not a lot until we work into these highs in the 7150 to 7200 range. Definitely going to have to give this one a range. Do we go off of the round number? Do we go at 72? Do we go off the swing high? I think we'll just, for me at least, I'll be looking at it as 7150, 72 range as kind of that next resistance. And again, these levels of resistance, for better or worse, are going to scare me a little bit more than some of the levels that we've seen recently. Not to say I'll go blindly bearish there. I will not do that. I won't see any signals at least day one, right? But I'll be keeping a close eye over there when and if we work into that spot. Over in the Dow, a little easier sledding right now. Don't have that resistance. We kind of had that trend line. They kind of spent a couple days hanging around, cleanly taking that out, working up towards these highs. So again, we've got a little bit of space for the most part, maybe a little bit of a challenge in the form of that flat 200 on the NASDAQ, on the S&P, a little bit more room to run before we start to work into some, again, we don't have to look at it the same way, but I definitely think that's a major price point and definitely something I'll be keeping a close eye on. Same real deal with the Russell, much like the Dow Jones doesn't have that overhead, not yet at least. We're getting closer to, an old support / resistance zone, not too terribly far from where we are in that 1540, 1550 range for me, at least. No real reason in my mind not to expect that we're going to continue this overall momentum and work into that range. Again, we might have a few challenges as we work into, a little later in this week or maybe next week, but we'll see it when we get there. So just a little bit more of the same as we continue to work through the last little while of this earnings season. As we kind of shift into our sectors, finally, maybe we just needed to give it a little pep talk yesterday. Maybe you just needed to complain a little bit about the materials sector. Showed a nice little pop here today of 0.73% on the day. As we talked yesterday, it's just really not been getting cooking like other areas like tech, communication services, industrials, for example, that have had this nice room to operate. Makes a little more sense why financials are struggling. They're dealing with some overhead resistance, and that's not easy to beat. When we look at materials and tech and industrials, they've had room to run, and materials just haven't really got on board. As we talked about yesterday, they listened, they heard our cries, and at least today, it's a little more movement in that sector. Overall, I don't think anything has changed today, just like I didn't think anything could change yesterday. Our support level around $52. Long as that holds, if we want to consolidate, that is okay. If we want to fill that space nicely, like we've seen industrials do, we're seeing tech do, that's okay too, right? So certainly a nice step here today. Again, who knows why? You never know why. You can come up with theories and good ideas or harebrained schemes, but whatever it is, it's just not kind of got into things. And it is an area that, seasonality-wise, is an area that can move this time of year. So should be fun to see that one if we can kind of get our, get some momentum over there. Over in energy, again, day 3 now, hanging out right at that old support level. We are clearly not the only ones out in the world of trading that are keeping a very close eye on that. If you were hoping for some resolution or clarity today, I don't think you got it. Either you were aggressive enough to think you had it, yesterday or even potentially Friday, or you were like me and saying, "Nah, you've got to sell me on it. I'm interested. I absolutely am, but not until I'm sold." And I don't think it did anything today that it didn't do yesterday as far as selling you is concerned. At least for me, I've not changed. I do like this area as a bullish zone, bullish sector going into the next couple of months, but that can't happen if we can't break this approximately 65. So yeah, potentially where we have kind of our cup right here and our handle right here. I know I'm a little bit ahead, so make sure, okay, is this what you're seeing? A cup right here, handle right here. I know I'm a wee bit ahead of you guys. It's kind of weird. So not as weird as the time when I was doing the market recap, and instead of showing you guys today, it was showing yesterday's episode. But if that's what you're looking at, okay, yeah, I could see where you're coming from on that side of things. For me, again, that is just such a round number. If we go into a weekly chart, maybe can kind of drown out a little bit of noise. Big support zone, consolidate, nice bounce. Big support zone, bounce, hold, break, free fall, right back there here today. So I can see where you're coming from on that daily chart. It's a potential reverse, reverse cup and handle. I wouldn't disagree with that evaluation. For me, the number is the big one. And again, I remember waiting for this breakout one way or the other back last spring, break to the downside, break to the upside, and waiting and waiting and waiting. And certainly looks like I'm not the only one who remembers that as we continue to hang around that 65 mark. We'll see where it takes us. But again, for me, I need to be sold. And certainly it didn't do it today. Over in the financials, we continue to have that battle. Again, as we've talked before, we do have some history here at that 2650, major break, support zone in days gone by. We've seen some real activity at that 2650. I think overall, I'm still in the same spot. Everything's still showing those bullish signals, continuing to, create, inch our way up, staying above our moving averages. Short-term averages keep pushing up and up and up. So, I still do like this area, but to be honest, I'm going to like it a lot more above 2650 than I do today. As I've kind of said, in the last couple of days as we've been hanging around this 26 marker, it's one of those areas that, if I'm in a position, I'm okay. If I'm looking for a new position, at least across the board, I'd like to pay that little bit extra to get that confirmation. Beyond that, really some clean, some space for us to work. Yeah, we'll have a flat 200, but really not a lot for about 80 cents, which again might not seem like a lot when we're looking at the XLF ETF. But go look at some of those financial stocks as we've seen these signals develop one after another, and they can certainly move. So 2650 continues to be the mark for me over there. Industrials just don't care. I mean, that has been an area that has been fantastic. Luckily, for us, I think a very clean, one to identify the last couple of weeks. Had a lot of space, and we've of course filled that space up now, working to and through that flat 200 period moving average here today, able to close above that. Unlike the NASDAQ and S&P, where that was just kind of where, let's call it a day. Industrials said, nah, let's just push right through it because we're industrials and we are definitely showing tremendous strength. Of course, Boeing breaking cleanly of 400 today certainly didn't hurt this sector, but continues to be a very strong area. We are extended, and all that really means to me is I need to mentally prepare for a pullback at some point in the future, you would think. But certainly just another little signal here today about that strength. Even if we pull back, the rest of this week, I'll be very excited about the industrial sector for next week's trades. I'm not going to hold my breath if we're going to pull back, but we'll wait and have to wait and see. Really not a lot to be working with. We're going to have to start identifying new areas. I'm not overly concerned about this one right here. It was just kind of a short-term, one day bake and break type of a deal. Sure, we could keep an eye on it if we work into it and it starts to stall there. Would make a wee bit of sense. So I'm not going to ignore it, but really, I don't think it's a major level of resistance. I don't really think we have a major level of resistance until we work into the 76 range. So again, there might be some short-term things that we'll have to deal with. You're absolutely right, Ilko. Great momentum going on over there. But really, as far as major, price history, I mean, we're looking in the $76 to $76 range as that next clearly, hey, this is a major price. We've seen major, price movement at this zone. So continue to like it. Expect to continue to like it for the days to come. No doubt about it. Same deal with our technology sector. Now, we're not quite as far along in the tech sector as we are industrials, but that doesn't mean they are not impressive in their own right. We've talked before, kind of the first stop going to be that flat 200 period moving average for me. Got a little bit more room before we work into it. We're seeing, breakouts of different tech stocks. So it's looking like a pretty strong sector on an individual stock level, in my opinion, at least, as well. Still be keeping an eye when we work up into that zone. If we come into a weekly chart, just see what that's going to look like. That's going to put us at this, basically we dropped, we rallied, we put in a high, and then we created a lower low, right? So might be something that we want to keep an eye on, may present a bit of a challenge. If, hey, we keep this momentum, we'll probably easily win it, but we'll see. We've seen some price action there. We'll definitely want to keep an eye on that. But between here and there, just like we said over really the last week since we saw this nice break right here, no reason it can't fill up that space. And at least so far, it's been very well behaved for us, which is always appreciated. Over in the staples, continues to inch up. it continues to show those bullish signals. I certainly understand that. As I've said many times, I don't really like this sector until we've dealt with this trend line. I'm patient. I can wait for it. But I do understand there are bullish signals in there. I do understand that that is my opinion, and not everyone's going to agree with that. So if we just kind of look at the price action, much like the rest of the market, we continue to build those bullish signals. It's even seen a little bit of a short-term moving average signal here today with the 9 EMA crossing over the 200 and the 50 long-term averages. So still looks pretty decent overall. 54 still concerns me. I'll expect the utility treatment where we run into that and sell off and use that as resistance. The next run through might be an entry that I would be interested in. But I want to see how it reacts there first. Got to appreciate that it's continuing to inch its way up, just not loving it, especially when you compare it to other areas in the market. I have a hard time understanding why someone would rather, be with staples right now than technology or industrials, or quite honestly, even materials, even though maybe it's outproduced materials in the last little while. I still wouldn't. I still don't get it. So I wouldn't get it, at least. But that's what's great about trading. Nobody has to agree with we don't have to agree with one another, right? We have to respect the signals and follow our trading rules. Speaking of utilities, we continue to use that. We've definitely held up nicely. As we all know, we really sold off, the day after hitting that the first time, but we've shown a lot of resiliency in the days since. We have tested that, but we continually use that as our resistance on the intraday. Again, I think this one's fairly easy from a potentially new entry perspective. Cleanly get me above 55, whether that's a one-day close, 50% of an ATR, whatever, my rules or your rules would dictate. I think that can be a tradable buyer's signal. I don't know that I'd be interested, but I would definitely recognize it as a bullish signal. Again, until we've broken through that, I'm going to basically be neutral. I'm not seeing sell signals. I am at some resistance that does concern me, but that doesn't mean I'm bearish. That doesn't mean there's sell signals that have developed, at least as of now. Right now, I'm boring on utilities, as I usually am. Usually pretty boring. As we talked about at the beginning, healthcare, a lot of earnings still coming. It's a real mixed bag so far, it seems. There's not really been a clear, yeah, it's good, or yeah, it's bad. Maybe we're not going to get one at all. Maybe we need the rest of the week. We still have, a good chunk of S&P companies in the healthcare sector reporting earnings in the next couple of days. So maybe that will give us some clarity. And I think we can see that in the price action. We really started to move here today, or at least we tried to. Want to go into the intraday here really quickly, just to kind of take a peek here. Gapped up on the open, much like the overall market, pushed up, and then really just kind of worked our way down. And unlike the market, which really kind of rallied and closed, on a high mark, if you will, these guys really didn't. We really kind of sold, as you can see, a fairly good sized red candle on the last 15-minute candlestick for the day. And again, I'm not saying that means anything at all, but I do think it does illustrate that there's a lot of indecision on these guys. It seems like I'm not the only one waiting for a little more clarity with earnings. We do continue to effectively hold that 90 as our short-term support level. Of course, an old resistance zone. We did breach it on the intraday yesterday, but of course, we did rally up nicely, closing above it. And again, closing above it, although, certainly not a great-looking candlestick here today within this sector. Everything, does continue from a technical point of view to hold those bullish signals, I think. So nothing really has changed. Still have a lot of room. Would love to get through earnings without tremendously moving, to the upside if we're going to continue to move up, because there is a lot of room. And I do like that, as you guys know. I like when there's clear air or room between where I am and where the next stop, at least sensibly to me, should be. So I'm going to need a couple more days to really iron that one out, I think. Nice little bounce back day in discretionary. Had Estee Lauder, Ralph Lauren, both come in with pretty good earnings. Big movers on the day. Amazon show a little bit of life here today. So we were talking yesterday, maybe we'll get a consolidation. Maybe we'll get a pullback. That wouldn't be a bad thing. Well, we still might. But we saw real nice upward movement here today. So working right back into that high point from last week. So kind of building one of those little intraday ceilings for us. If we take that out, really shouldn't be a big deal to fill up this next little space. And then I just stole that line, so we'll get this one and add it up here because we have a feeling there's a good chance we might need it before too long. So really continues to hold its own. Not a lot to see here, but we did see some nice movement on components. So, and hey, Seth, hey, Blake, good to see you guys. Welcome to the market recap and the recap gang. We're happy to have you. It's always fun hanging out with you guys live and in person for sure. So, so many of you I've seen, you know, the Clubhouse and the Halftime Report, you know, in our other shows. I feel like I know you, so it's always fun to kind of get to interact a little bit more. So great to have you guys with us. So watch how we respond on that intraday resistance, but really continue to see those bullish signals, not really seeing anything to change momentum. Some pretty interesting earnings, some nice moves in EL and RL here today for sure. And over in real estate, again, it just does not want to pull back. Traders are just looking for any excuse. We saw it. We talked about it on Friday and Monday, where it's at resistance. We all know that that's a major resistance level. We know that this was one heck of a V-shaped recovery in this sector. It would sell off on the intraday, look like, okay, here's that pullback, and then boom, right off of those intraday lows. Today, just carrying over that momentum from yesterday, pushing up even further. It's a very strong sector right now, no doubt about it. It did, you know, I think you would argue that it did, you know, and again, I think we need to see a little more upward movement. I think that's going to be the determining factor tomorrow morning open. So how do we open? We close strong. We closed, if not above resistance, boy, very, 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 very close. If we continue that momentum, are able to take out today's high on the open, I would call that a break personally. So yeah, if I see that movement, a lot of times you'll see we break and then we open a little lower and never even test to confirm it. Who knows if that's what will happen this time. But if we do see some upward movement, yeah, I absolutely will think that this is a break. You know, I think from a pure technical definition, you could call it one today. But I think that would be a very aggressive stance, and I'm not very aggressive in that regard. I do think we closed it. If we continue that momentum, why not 35? It doesn't seem to care about any levels of resistance whatsoever. If there's nothing in the way, why not work into it? So we continue to show just tremendous strength and resiliency over in the real estate sector. There is no doubt about that. It's, you know, I've said it before, but 2 weeks ago we were watching it, you know, just as it had broke out. You know, hey, is it taken 5? It might need to pull back. And then ever since, boy, it is just, it's not like it wasn't doing great until then, but boy, these last couple of weeks have been impressive. And lastly, over communication services, just more of the same. Again, I think this one was one of those that everyone was afraid. We all had what we needed to see. And whatever that might have been, I think we saw it after Facebook's earnings. This is a fairly bullish signal. We've talked about it, you know, several days now. Other coaches have talked about it in the halftime report and the different shows. Continues to show very, very well. Didn't have a huge response to Google's earnings because we didn't move very much on Google's earnings. Like the Facebook earnings, we really moved, right? So we didn't see a tremendous amount of movement. Continues to look very strong, you know, not really a whole lot to see. Now, as we're kind of working forward, again, do keep in mind that this ETF is very Facebook and Google heavy, so they do play a huge part in what it is doing. So if you're ever just trading the ETF outright, I do think the right call is to follow along with you know, Facebook and Google. But as we look at this ETF, we are going to be working into an old support zone, old breakdown point, not too far away from us, not necessarily a huge concern, but we have seen price action. Never really had to do this on XLC since it came around. So looking forward to that as we move forward. So a little bit of overhead. We're going to start dealing with old support zones, testing as resistance in the days to come, it looks like. So it'll be interesting to see if we can continue this momentum. Make no mistake about it, there's a lot of momentum in the short term over in this sector. Maybe EA's earnings missing. We'll throw a little cold water on it, but they're just one component, right? So there we are in our sectors. Again, as you can kind of see, for the most part, just more of the same. Don't really think anything happened today from a technical perspective that would change my opinion from where it was yesterday. As we look at the sectors, I continue to like the areas that I've been liking, and nothing really has changed on that side of things. We're filling up some space, though. We're going to be challenging some more levels of resistance in some of these areas in the days to come, but not a lot of major overhead, especially if we can take out those flat 200 period moving averages in our NASDAQ and our S&P, which technically I don't think they're going to be that big of a deal. If the market wants to sell, it'll sell, right? We all know that, but I don't think those are huge technical catalysts. I just think it's always a good idea to keep an eye on them. As we look at the VIX, again, market continues to go up, VIX continues to go down. Traders and investors just feeling a lot more comfortable with working in the market. No surprise there. Did see a little more upward movement, closing above 96 in the dollar as it continues to do its back and forth and back and forth. Like I've said many times, the only thing that ever really changes is what's the side of, right? I'm neutral until we come out of this range. That realistically is not going to change. I'm probably going to be a broken record for a while because a good chance we're in this range for a while, right? But you never know. The only thing that really ever changes is, am I a little more to the bullish or the bearish with, in my neutrality? For me right now, below here, I'm going to kind of still lean towards the bearish side. But again, really being honest, it's a flat neutral and leave it be. If we're trading, pairs, fair enough. Let's go with that. We're looking at this index. I mean, there's better areas. There's better charts to trade than this one, I think, at least. So it continues to trade within that range, but we were able to close above 96. We've seen that act as support in particular on several occasions. We did have a nice little run when we broke 96 before. Of course, we got smacked down pretty hard once we got into that 50-period moving average. Really continues to be a very neutral chart. And sometimes if you're having a hard time, with the chart, look at the weekly, and it really helps. I mean, this is basically soup, right? Coach Mark and I call it soup. Basically, we're just hanging in the same spot. We move, but we go nowhere, right? And so that is where we find ourselves in the dollar right now. And until we come out of that range, I will expect her to stay in that range, to be quite honest with you. As we look at our metals, starting to see a little bit of buyer step back into it. I would love to see a little bit more of a pullback, and we very well may get it. Not that I really expect us to pull all the way back to the breakout point of around 13.05, somewhere in that ballpark, but I would like to see that happen. It never hurts to ask. It does still, everything is still showing bullish, right? If we're looking for new entries, is this the day? Well, if someone said it was, I wouldn't put up too much of a fight, although I would say you can probably do better from a technical perspective at the same time. Be patient. Let's see if we can get a little bit of a pullback or if we consolidate. As we know, when we see stocks or we see commodities or we see whatever that's got a head of steam, oftentimes folks are just looking for a reason to buy, right? And a green candle can do that on something that's had the strength of gold. Not saying that it will. If I knew it was going to, I would certainly be happy to tell you, but I'm not going to be surprised. I'd love to see a little bit of deeper pullback. I'm going to hope that I get a little bit of a deeper pullback. Do I expect one? Not really, but we'll see where we go. But we did start to see a little bit of buyers stepping back in to that market here today, no doubt about it. Kind of a similar situation, not closing the green on silver, but kind of a similar situation. We weren't really able to carry over that momentum on that big hammer that developed yesterday by any means, but we are continuing to see folks, willing to not let this drop. All right, folks are willing to buy as it gets on the lower side. Again, I think at the very least, if we're looking for new, pullback, retracement type of situations, probably for my taste at least, probably need another day or two if they're, at least for them to develop the way at least I would like them to as we move forward. So our numbers really stay the same. Probably a clean break above this right here is probably the best signal, in my opinion, on silver right now. Gets us above 16, gets us above this old support zone. We're a ways away. Maybe there will be a pullback opportunity that does develop, late week or early next week to change my mind. But as it looks right now, that's probably the cleanest signal I think that we'll be able to get from a bullish perspective, at least. Technically, I don't know how you can make a bearish argument against it right now. That may change. But today, I'm not seeing how you could make that argument. Natty Gas continues to just do what Natty Gas does. A little bit of a bounce back here today using this old support zone as some resistance. Continues to basically be a place in my mind to stay away from a trading point of view. Looking at this weekly chart, is this a doji at support? I don't want to get, I don't know. So I'm not going to mess around with it. I do know if we can cleanly break this, our next real level of support is 250. That should be a really interesting number if we work into it. As you can see here on this weekly chart, a lot of history at a very round number at 250. That's probably the next interesting price point, at least the way we're currently developed on our charts. Again, I wish I had something more interesting to say about natural gas every day. One day I will, but today is not that day. Just a little bit more of the same, a little bit more back and forth as, this is ugly, right? This is not showing bullish signals. Let's just call it that. It's very volatile. It's scary, at least in my opinion, but the signals are all to the bearish side at the same time. So, of course, folks aren't chomping at the bit to jump in, at least just yet. And lastly, over in crude, we closed 55, did not get that momentum. And that's why, kind of talk about that real estate, that momentum is so important. Break it on the intraday. That's kind of step one, because if you don't break it on the intraday, you can't break it on the daily, right? Then hold that break on the daily chart. Okay, we did close above resistance, and then show that basically, very common method of getting in is, okay, we closed above resistance. Let's get in above today's high tomorrow, right? We probably all use that once or twice in our trading careers. If we can't carry that momentum, well, how exciting can we be, right? And so right now, crude pushing back, on a fail. I think you have to call it a fail, at least today. Don't think it's showing bearish signals or anything like that. We want to get technical. I mean, we have put in higher highs and higher lows, right? But we're dealing with a pretty significant number, pretty significant price history at 55, much like energy. I do look at this as an interesting bullish opportunity. It's just got to cleanly break. And at least for me, that has not happened yet. And until it does, not really all that interested in chasing after it. No reason to. There's other great opportunities out there. If this one wants to take off without me, oh well, right? Good chance that it won't. Good chance even if it does, I can get a pullback or something. I need to see a nice clean break and momentum off of the 55. Can get very excited. From an entry point of view, I think right now, at least with where we are, I think you have to be looking at taking out this high. I think you have to. If we take out this high, I could understand 100% the argument to be moving in. Probably wouldn't be where I would move in, but I would not fight anybody who said that that's where their entry point was. So exactly, Oka. I want to see some strength. I used to chase breakouts just like a lot of people have, and I've learned over the years that let them come to you. There's always another one right around the corner, and so I was always and I think this is what happens. We get worried that if we don't get in early, it's going to take off, because every so often that does happen, right? And it is kind of a bummer to be watching for a breakout, not get in, and then watch it go crazy to your direction. There's no doubt that that's not a great time by any means, but there's always another breakout. So I'm with you. Let's get a nice clean close above that resistance. There is room to run into the 59.60 range, which of course for me, as you guys know, will be a profit-taking zone. A bearish zone? No, not sight unseen. But a profit-taking zone, yeah, absolutely. A lot of support there. Going to line up with that trend line. So there's space. We don't have to go crazy. So exactly. Hey, welcome to the wimpy party, Ilka. It's always room for one more wimp as far as I'm concerned. So, overall, a little bit more of the same. Crude still trying to figure itself out. Hasn't really, generated any sell signals. I mean, if the way it develops in the days to come, I mean, maybe you could start at least to theoretically discuss a bull pullback if we see some slowing momentum into Wednesday, Thursday, maybe a doji on Friday down in the 52.50 range. Maybe, maybe we could talk. I still probably wouldn't, because I'm too big of a wimp, but I would understand. But really not anything to see here just yet. Definitely some selling, though. If we're just talking about what did we do today, we really did sell, closing near the lows of the day pretty continuously to the downside here today. So our buy signals are definitely not here yet. I don't think we've generated any sell signals on anything other than intraday timeframes, at least as of right now. So not a lot changed, just kind of a little bit, for the most part, more of the same. Natural gas continues to be untradeable. Our areas that have room continue to, for the most part, work to the upside, some more impressively than others, no doubt about it. But really not a lot from a technical point of view. Do keep an eye on those flat 200s. Again, do I expect those to be major levels? Not really. But they are kind of the only thing that maybe jumps out to somebody if they're looking for a reason to take profits before we get to that 2,800 in the S&P. So if they do consolidate or pull back there, wouldn't be the most shocking thing ever either. So let's keep an eye on those. I'm sure we'll see them tomorrow in the halftime report. So ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for the market recap today. But as always, it is certainly my pleasure. It's always great to see you guys, and I do appreciate your time. It's always fun to work through this process with you guys. So thanks a lot for joining me. If you are new around here, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. And be sure to follow us over at Tackle Trading on Twitter as well to keep up with some of the things that we're running into each and every trading day, whether movers of the day, upcoming earnings, interesting charts. Always love to hang out with you guys on Twitter. And of course, you guys know if you are Twitter users and I haven't got you added to our Team Tackle Twitter list, just yell at me. You can yell at me here in the halftime report, in the clubhouse, at Frank Martin 23 on Twitter. I'm not too hard to find, so let me know. I'll be happy to get you added to that. Just another great way for us to be able to stay in touch with one another. So if you do enjoy the market recap, it is always helpful and appreciated if you do give it a thumbs up, just to let us know that it is helpful and let YouTube know that it's helpful as well. So always a pleasure, guys. Great to see you as always. My pleasure, Thiago. Always great to see you guys. So get the heck out of here. Go enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, and we'll do it same time, same channel here tomorrow. So thanks for your time, everybody. See you tomorrow.